Today's episode is brought to you by the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Now listen, the current political and social climate, combined with the urgent challenges that our Black men and boys are facing, demand that we act boldly right now. 25% of Black children don't graduate high school on time. Compare that to the national average of 17%. Now, if we compound the issue even further, Black male graduation rate sits at 59%. Compare that to 65% for Latino males and 80% for white males, and you realize why CBMA is a beacon of hope. They're the only organization right now making themselves available to those leaders and organizations that are on the ground, working to advance the cause and reverse this narrative for Black men and boys. If you've not yet done so, I urge you today to visit tbpod.com/partners. Learn more about the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Consider joining their membership and investing in the future of our Black men and boys.
You're listening to the Trailblazers.fm podcast, where we'll explore the stories of today's successful Black professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Join us to access the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished professionals and come away with the know-how, confidence, and motivation you'll need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen A. Hart.
Blazer Nation, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers.fm podcast. I am Stephen A. Hart. I'm your host, and I just want to kick things off by saying what a blessing this year has been so far. A couple weeks ago, as many of you are aware, we were actually featured on the homepage of Apple Podcasts and did an amazing thing for bringing awareness to the podcast and shining a light on the work we're doing. So if any of you are here for the first time, or this is really beginning to be a podcast that you're checking out, I just want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us. You're now part of our community we affectionately call our Blazer Nation, and you're about to receive what we call Mission Fuel. That's the motivational wisdom and actionable advice and insights that you'll gain from listening to an episode, and hopefully it helps you to blaze your trail in life. We're actually entering the month of March, and March actually represents Women's History Month. And so it's our third year celebrating. And we do so by featuring 4 or 5, depending on how many Mondays are in the month of March. We celebrate Black women all month long. So we are getting set to kick off things for March with an amazing conversation I shared with Christina Lewis. Christina is the founder and chief executive officer of All Star Code. So do me a favor, grab a notepad or your favorite note-taking app and get set to receive some mission fuel from our featured trailblazer today, Christina Lewis. Christina, welcome and thanks so much for being our featured trailblazer on today's episode.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's an honor to be here and speak to your followers.
Yes, so it was a pleasure to actually meet you this past October. I was actually part of a CBMA gathering at your dad's museum in Baltimore. And we're going to talk a bit in a moment about your dad, but wanted to kick things off and ask you to help us. We love to start these conversations off from a place of gratitude, and this being the beginning of Women's History Month. Wanted to ask you to share a blessing about a woman or women that you're most grateful for. Could be women in your life or maybe those that inspired you to help get you to where you are today.
Well, I come from a long line of strong women, and I'm so grateful to them, starting with, say, my grandmother, Carolyn Fugit, born Carolyn Cooper. She was born in 1925 in Baltimore, and she was born a woman. She was born Black, and, she was born, they were working class. And I say if any one of those things had been different, she would have been a U.S. Senator. This woman is that smart, that dynamic, that vivacious. As it was, she ended up getting pregnant with my father at 16 and not graduating from high school. And instead, moving through life, of course, working almost her entire life, raising him with help in her parents' house, and then going on to have 5 more children, and now has She's 93 years old. She still gardens sometimes and has 13 grandchildren and a growing number of great-grandchildren and is still really like the rock of the family. But so I'm so grateful to my grandmother. My mother, of course, Lloyda Lewis, is a role model for me. She was born in the Philippines in a tiny fishing village and was planning to be, she was a lawyer, graduated from law school in the Philippines, but then she was in New York traveling where she met my father, and she really was a woman who followed her heart, ambitious, not afraid of risks. And when she fell in love with him, she decided to make her life here in the States with him. And she went on to practice the law and ultimately, supported my father in his career. And when he died, eventually became CEO of the company. And so she's really, a role model as well. And at one point, as she was the CEO, I think, of the largest woman-run business in the United States. She was on the cover of Working Woman. This was when I was in high school. And so I'm very sort of have strong female role models.
Yes, I love this, love this, love this. We often talk on this podcast about legacy, and I often share that your legacy are the seeds you plant in a garden you likely will never see, right? Mm-hmm. And I love this episode because I think it's a perfect time and a perfect opportunity to share with our Blazer Nation what that looks like from a practical sense, right? You just shared so much about the women in your life, but your dad, Reginald F. Lewis, is without question a pioneer of our generation. And one of the most, I shared with you before the call, one of the most recommended authors and books spoken about on this podcast. And your dad left a legacy, right? To you and your family and your seeds, right? Like to continue on. And this is some 25 years after his passing. Traditionally a time where we talk a bit about your background. I'd love to invite you and give you an opportunity as much time as you'd like to share with us some of your own memories and perspective of growing up in your family with the parents you had, and just share whatever you care to share about this amazing man and your parents, really, and the blessing that you had growing up.
Well, thank you for that. It has been 25 years since he died, and I was 12 when he did, back in 1993. And his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? He completed a manuscript of it in his last year on this earth. And it really is just so rewarding to me and to my whole family that so many people have continued to read it. We're very grateful to the author, Blair Walker, who helped, fill out the story. It has been amazing to see how many people read the book and then credit it with putting them on a new path. I mean, thousands, not tens of thousands. The book was a bestseller, but in any case, I will plug, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Again, just for, those who need a reminder. But,
absolutely.
My story, of course, is complementary. By the time I came around, my father had established himself in New York. I was the younger daughter, so he had his practice on Wall Street, which was the first Black-owned Wall Street law firm, was pretty well established, and he had already begun looking for deals. And when I was young, when I was 3 years old, he bought McCall, his first deal, which was a leveraged buyout for $25 million. So at that point, he went from being a lawyer, in New York, of which there are many, call them, middle class, upper middle class, into then this sort of business owner thing. And I moved to a private school, and then a few years later we moved to Paris when he bought TLC Beatrice International. Wow. We lived there in the heart of the 7th arrondissement, and he lived this life of a sort of corporate mogul. There was a private plane and a corporate jet that he used to visit all of the different companies because it was very far flung. So in a day he might go to 4 different countries. and visited his factories there. And I did grow up, and he took me on one of these trips. I would say when I was like 9 or 10, and I got to pick friends to bring along. And so we went to a potato chip factory, an ice cream factory. This was just once. This was very special. So yes, I did have that experience. But then, of course, it was all cut short really suddenly. He got sick, sort of very quickly. And then everything changed. As he got sick, we left Paris really in the middle of the year. I didn't even get to say bye to my friends. Moved back. I was just out of school for over a month as they were just like thinking about what to do, and he was getting the best medical care. The reason they wanted to get him the absolute best medical care, and that was in New York in the U.S. So then after he passed, we settled back in the States, and I grew up in New York. I went back to the school that I'd been in back in second grade and graduated. I went to Harvard like my sister had, and really kind of just spent a lot of time quietly grappling with a lot of big issues, like legacy, as well as just general things related to grief. It was very hard on my whole family, when he died for a lot of different reasons. Not, for a lot of course, like very typical reasons, all the emotions. Then there was a company that had to be run and a lot of different priorities that just, it happened so suddenly, things hadn't been thought through related to succession. And luckily, myself, I wasn't involved in that. I was only 12, so it was my mother and sister who bore the brunt of that. So that's just some of the stories. I'll say that what I tell people is I'm a recovering striver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that really does inform the methodology behind All Star Code, the organization that we founded in 2013 that develops young men of color with entrepreneurial mindsets and the tools they need to succeed in the technological world. And this was this sort of realization that I came to in like my late 20s, after really a life spent focused on achievement. And of course, certainly still very achievement oriented. But really, my father was defined by achievement. He talks about it in a lot of his speeches. He actually says, I was raised to value achievement, goals, hitting them, going to the best schools. I was a Wall Street Journal reporter earlier in my career, and it's like, if you're a Wall Street Journal reporter, you need to be writing for page one. Why? Well, because that's the best. And that was how that's really how I grew up. Whatever is the best, that's where you should be. And the challenge with that, there are of course many benefits: excellence, high standards, pushing yourself that are very rewarding. But the challenge is that you can end up not understanding who you are. And it really can be like an extrinsic motivator, something you're just doing it because it's the best. You don't actually necessarily want to do it. So anyway, I'm a recovering striver in that I saw that you really have to be clear about your purpose.
Yes.
And about your impact. And if you don't, you can end up, and I feel like I narrowly avoided this fate, but you can end up having spent, say, 15, 20 years in a career, and you have a big title, you have a big salary, or a middling salary, as it happens that you've spent all this time, and then you look up and you realize, wait, why am I here? What happened? And perhaps in the meantime, a friend of yours who was just fooling around with film, all of a sudden, like, he's a fellow at Sundance, and or she's a fellow at Sundance. You're like, wait a second,
Yes.
Why am I stuck in middle management at an insurance company? Yes. Or on, sort of like on, struggling to stay on the partner track at a law firm. But do I even, I don't even really like any of these people. What's going on? And
wow.
So that's what.
Christina, you hit the nail on the head in such a big way without even realizing it. But I've sat in the past, probably a year and a half ago, that I sat with a Fortune 100 executive who literally sat with me and basically said as much. She was like, I am extremely unhappy. Mm-hmm. And this had to be somebody who's making multiple 7 figures a year at this point, but truly unhappy because he wasn't living out his life's purpose.
Yes.
And I've met so many people on the flip end of the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
As you talk about photography and film, one of our very first guests featured on this podcast is someone that, had a love for photography, but really went to school for computers and did networking for a bit, but had a passion for photography and pursued that. And now is the Caribbean's go-to wedding photographer and lifestyle photographer, and is living out his life's, greatest purpose, right? And his passion. And love that you brought that up for sure. I question though, how, as you talk about discovering your own life's purpose and what your impact would be, how much pressure was there, if any, trying to weigh that against your dad's, like what he had accomplished, and your mom also being this accomplished woman? Was there pressure to try and live up to this standard, or their standard, I should say?
Well, yes. Yes. I think this is all in that context. First, let's say, yes, it was an extremely high pressure household. Very loving, very loving. But both my parents just set such high standards for themselves. There was really no other way to be but excellent. Yeah. So I was a little. Yeah. I was a very successful kind of like striver bot kid. If I went and got a 97, I wanted 100. On the math test. If I came home, say, and complained about a teacher, I got a bad grade, and I would say, well, I don't like the teacher. One of my dad's favorite things he'd say is that, well, any student can learn from a good teacher. The good students learn from bad teachers.
Wow. Wow.
So there's just there are no excuses, no hiding. If he could do if he could do what he was doing, you could certainly do what study in Japanese class. And my mother embodies that as well. So I definitely, both my sister and I learned, just like how to set goals, make a plan, and execute. And my father used to send us memos. So a lot of, basic stuff. I don't care who you are. You need to, sort of a crucial life skill is to be able to set a goal and achieve it, and make a plan to do that. And then understand when that plan isn't working out. And I think now the term is pivot. But my father might have said, just think again, try again, try it differently. And there was a lot of, we had dinner together every night when he was in town, and he would, they'd tell us about different business situations. He taught me how to read, the stock tables.
At 12. Wow.
Oh, at 8.
Wow.
He taught me how to read the stock tables. He hired me as a stockbroker at 7. It was sort of a play thing, but I would go and I would actually call into the exchange, using the phone like you do, and I would track how the stocks had performed. It was a portfolio of 10. No, the guy was super intent about as a father and in teaching us, molding us. He was very, he's a really dominating presence. So I learned a lot. We learned a lot, from him. It's a little nuts, to be honest. It worked, but it also didn't work because it was it was a lot. When I went on those factory trips with him, for example, and, I was a very good student and a good writer. I'd write a memo. So then he actually sent me to one of his factories once, and he wasn't there, but he'd already had me write memos and checked it. He saw I did a pretty good job. So I was he had me writing, memos to him, from Thailand, after visiting these places. So I, it is important, sort of no matter what, to be able to set goals, make a plan, and execute. But then, I think the experience of the downside to it, of course, is how quickly he passed, and his health, and being, certainly being successful isn't worth, obviously your life, but it isn't worth your health. And so for myself, that really is a big lesson, because of course personally I would much prefer that he'd never bought Beatrice and had, and we're still around today.
Right.
So I think that's how I sort of eventually came to this sort of realization that you had to find, I don't believe in balance, but we might say harmony, and also just try to find a way to you can't change the past, but to ensure that all his hard work didn't go in, didn't go in vain.
Right, right.
We are in a new.
I'm happy you shared that, Christina, because you're speaking to a young dad, and that I value those words. I appreciate that, because I can sometimes be, as I listen to you, I'm thinking of my own journey and never doing enough. And it's important to make sure that I'm here for my kids over the long term.
Yes, absolutely.
So I appreciate you sharing that for sure. I want to talk to you a little bit about this shift and talk a little bit about All-Star Code. You shared a little bit about it just a moment ago, but if you could take us back and kind of explain the opportunity or the gap that you saw that really fueled you giving birth to this nonprofit.
Well, I bring a lot of different experiences and unique insights to the table that make me uniquely suited to what we're doing now, which is developing students with entrepreneurial mindset and overall the tools they need to succeed in the technological world. And one of the questions you asked me before is, what has made you successful? What has helped you the most to deal with the challenges in your industry? And in my case, I think there are two things. One, I do have a gift for this might sound grandiose, but I mean, you could call it vision, right? And you might also say, they say entrepreneurs need to live in the future, sort of like see the future. And that's very much me. I did this as a professional business journalist. And, whether it's through reading, but also talking to people, I consume a lot of different books, a lot of different news articles. I see art, other things. I really try to divine where things are going, in particular business and industry, if all of them, the markets. And so saw very clearly that tech was an ecosystem that people of color were not participating in. And this was, 7 years ago. And in 2011, I went to my first tech conference. And this was a 1,000-person conference. And I couldn't find a single Black or Latino person who was participating in the core of the sector. And this was a conference full of people with tech companies because it was for entrepreneurs. And I was seeing people who had a vegan recipe app, and they'd raised $8 million in funding, right? And then the Black and brown people who were there, either maybe they had companies but were very small, small embryonic, but more typically were like me. I was there because I was a journalist. There were filmmakers, there were artists, but really I don't think I found a single one who was actually employed at a company with VC backing, or if I did, it was just really, and this was 1,000 people.
Wow. Yeah.
And again, I'm sure there were some there, but I didn't meet them, So then I was just able to I think understand that was an issue, and I'm a storyteller, so I was able to then put that into a context that makes sense, which was, look, this is an engine of job growth and innovation today, not just because it's getting these, becoming an engineer is a ticket into the middle class, but also this is where the action is. These products, once they're built and they take off, they change the world. And if the Black and Latino communities aren't participating in it, they're really, really missing out, because this is change that's going to change the world in the next generation. But second, if you do actually are able to, let me say, diversify it, I actually like to say integrate it, there are so many opportunities. This perspective isn't even there. So how can we do that? And I said, well, there are these programs happening for girls. And as I was looking at this, just a couple had started, including Girls Who Code, which was still very young. They said, young men of color aren't being tapped. And if my father were a young man today, someone like him, he would want to be in tech. He wouldn't be trying to go to law school. Yet my father participated in a pre-law program. It was actually sort of the first, they didn't call it that, but that's what it was. And it was the first one ever in the United States. And if he hadn't had a group of gatekeepers open up access for him. He always said he wouldn't have been able to move into the core of Wall Street. He really needed that support, as talented as he was. So I was able to then just sort of craft the storyline to people that set it in this context of history that could explain then why I was doing this like really crazy thing, which was recruiting. And when I first started, it was just Black boys. I was really focused on sort of both Afro, Latino, and African American. Now we're all young men of color who are from groups underrepresented in computer science. Was able to then explain why I was doing this radical thing, which was investing thousands of dollars in each single young man to do this 6-week summer intensive program that would really but like educate them in quite a lot of computer science and coding so that they were really prepared to pursue this.
Wow.
Which is an All-Star Code's core program. Ultimately, our goal is to be a clear pipeline into the tech ecosystem. And we're committed to ensuring that our students have the tools they need to thrive in, as we say, the technological world. 85% of our students are majoring in computer science or a related field. However, we expect that over time as we grow, we'll have a number who might be majoring in something else, but minoring in computer science or a related field, and then going from there into a whole suite of other roles. You don't need to be a software engineer in order to have a great career, find a great job, and also like participate in in the 21st century economy.
Right.
So that's what
Christina,
we're doing.
I love that. I love all that you're doing. I love the backstory of this. One of the things I've learned having so many conversations on this podcast over the past 3 years is that failure really represents the lessons, especially in entrepreneurship. And I love that I saw one of the principles taught in your summer intensives is that, right? Celebrating failures. And I'd love for you maybe to tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges or some of the failures you had to endure and maybe celebrate, right? So that you could kind of see All-Star Code come to where it is today.
The biggest fail that I made in the early years was not doing branding from the very beginning. I just wrote a series I published on Medium called 5 Lessons from 5 Years of All-Star Code. And the first one is do branding from the very beginning. It wasn't something that I valued. I was really results oriented. As you can see, I'm like manic about, our cash flow and how we survey our students, a lot. We're even doing some longitudinal surveys on our impact to track not just how they did right after our summer program, but actually every year we're committed to sort of asking them, okay, you said you were studying computer science. What's up now? So this whole branding thing, which seems to cost a ridiculous amount of money for what to me at that time was like a logo, whatever, I can create a logo. But I didn't understand just how much of an expertise it is. And I really wish. And I would just tell everyone who is thinking about starting something to do branding from the very beginning.
I love that.
And spend the money. No one does, by the way. Like, it feels like too much. It's $30,000. But if you really believe that the thing that you're doing is going to take off, no, then you should do it from the very beginning, because it's just so important today as far as just digital and and branding. It's just not, and it's very hard to put back in the box. So that's one mistake. Failures. I mean, there were and there are so many. I mean, you have a team of a little under 20 people, I'd say. Some of those people are part-timers, contractors, but the team that's with us year-round, plus our main program is summer, so we hire about 40 seasonal staff to actually do the program, and we leverage a lot of different volunteers for mentorship and other things. And I think that the sort of different principles of management, and HR, how to manage and then how to lead, a lot of management and leadership failures, that were really difficult. With All-Star Code, every year I've been the founder, yet my job is different. First I'm just, there's no one to manage. I was just out the door every day at 8:30 when my son was 1. And I was just going out the door. I found this tiny I found a woman who had a startup in Chinatown, and I paid her a couple $100 to just sit at a desk. And I stayed there. Her business actually wasn't working out, and so it kept shrinking and shrinking, and she moved offices, and then there were fewer and fewer people. And it became, I was like the only person still there, and the Wi-Fi stopped working. I was like, I didn't need anything except I just had to be out of the house. So then I went and found a co-working space. But leadership, and then managing yourself, but then managing other people and then leading other people, and what that looks like is definitely something that I'm working on. I'm trying to find sort of the big failures. One of them is, this may be a little strange, but one of them is a failure to not dare greatly. And I think for many people who are high achieving, and somewhat perfectionist, some of the missed opportunities aren't things that you didn't pursue, things that you said no to because they felt too risky, things that you beat all the joy out of because you were scared of them.
Yes. That's a word right there, Christina.
Yeah. And so
some good stuff.
Yeah, so those are some of the mistakes.
I love that. Love that. Let me ask you, how many young men have actually gone through the program at this point?
We've done one-day events and a lot of other things that have delivered real impact. But our core program, 433.
Wow. That is amazing.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yes, we're in New York and Pittsburgh now. And we have a handful of students who are going to be graduating from college this year in the spring.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, we're really excited, and they're doing really well. They're doing really well.
Obviously, there are expectations that you have for these young men coming out of the program, out of these summer intensives, but what are some of the unexpected outcomes, some of the things that you and your team noted that, you didn't quite expect, right? On the positive side, with some of these guys as they successfully complete the program?
This is going to be, I don't even know how people are going to take this. But so some of our students are just so highly in demand. There's so few African Americans and Latinos graduating from, shall we say, selective computer science programs. Right now, we'll say top 100 schools. It's depressing, and it's difficult to find data, but we find with our students that, say out of a computer science program of 300, there's a handful of African Americans and Latinos, and of those there might be fewer boys than girls. So our students who have reached that point do have, any student who has demonstrated certain competencies, at this age, and they're proving well in the major. Particularly, our students also, have a lot of ancillary understanding of the industry because they've gone to site visits, so they understand some of the lingo. They're on GitHub. They've gone to hackathons, so they're extremely desirable candidates. So we have students actually turning down internships, which I'll be honest, I am I'm not happy about this, because that in some cases it's because the internships are out in San Francisco and housing there is just so expensive, which is a real problem. But a number of them are, we have a few who are working on different products and already have things that could be viable.
Wow.
For sure. Yeah, it's a little crazy.
That is amazing. And Christine, bring me back. Are the young men that are accepted to the program, are they all in, what is their background? Beyond race?
Everyone asks this. So 55% of our students, who are in college are first generation college students.
Wow.
That said, we are a mixed income program. Mm-hmm. So no, it's not exclusively low income students.
Okay.
I believe I have to get our most recent class, but typically 70% qualified for free reduced lunch. And that's self-reported. We don't actually screen for income, just we recruit heavily. It's an entirely free program. But yes, our students have a range.
That is interesting. So you touched on you being in Pittsburgh and New York. And I think I read that you're planning to expand into new markets as well in the coming years, right?
Yes, we are. We are sort of active. We're strategizing now about how we'll evolve over the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
So stay tuned on what the next city will be, where I don't think that we'll decide on another city before 2020. But at that point, for the summer, I expect that we'll be able to grow significantly.
And what is the age requirement for the boys?
So they're current sophomores and juniors in high school.
Okay.
That is
Fantastic.
our target demographic. And any student can apply. Our application's open now.
For this coming summer.
For this coming summer. In fact, it's a rolling application. So we've already accepted one cohort of students. We're targeting 200 for this summer, again in New York and Pittsburgh. Students must be able to commute in. And it really is a pretty simple application that we do ask for grades, but we don't take them into account. We are looking for motivated students. That's why there is an application.
Mm-hmm.
They need to want, sort of to have this amazing skill, which is that if you can, learn how to tell the computer what to do, you have this level of independence. You can just have an idea and then build it.
Yes.
And it's really empowering. 90% of our students report that after our program, they've decided to work harder in school.
Wow.
Even though it's not that they like school more. In fact, sometimes they like school a lot less. Yet they see now that it's really just they understand what they can get out of it. And, they do well in high school. They can go to college, and in college, you can decide where you go and be in charge of your life, or a key aspect of your life for the first time. So it's been very successful. That said, of course, there are challenges.
As there always will be, right?
Not every experience is, is the same. Of our students who are in college, we certainly have some students who are, who have struggled, within their college, or who have left, and and we're figuring things out.
Christina, I am impressed. I'm wowed. I just want to acknowledge you, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking not only of the 433 young men that have come through, but that you have had a true impact on their lives going forward. But I'm also thinking of the impact of those young men on their respective communities and their circles, right? Because if at that age, when I was in high school, if I had other people around me, I went to all-boy high school in Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm thinking about the fact that if we had more people who had that exposure, influencing their circles, there could have been so much more, right? Guys that went on to achieve their measure of greatness. So I think there's more impact than just that 433 number within that age group. Those boys are going back into their communities, going back into their schools. And that energy, I am sure that positive energy and that drive that comes from what they've learned and the confidence that they've gained is inspiring others in a big way. So I commend you and I acknowledge you for the work you're doing. I'm so very happy and proud of what you're doing and just encouraging you to keep pushing. There's some in our community listening who might have dreams themselves of one day starting a nonprofit of their own. I just wanted to maybe have you, share what's your advice to them.
Survey from the very beginning. The best funders are looking for results, and far too many people just don't include evidence-based thinking regarding whatever they're going to do at the outset. And it's vital. You can't just teach something and think it's cool and grow it, or rather you can, but you run into issues. So you have to think about evaluation from the very beginning. And just have that in mind. And I think that's one of the big challenges for some organizations. They don't have anything to measure. They know they're doing good work, but they haven't thought about it. In our case, I really thought about it, and they said full-time employment in technology early in their careers. That's the goal that I'm shooting for, with this thing. That's what we're going to define as them being successful, because if they have that, I know that whatever else they do in their career, they're going to have a ton of options. So
Yes.
let's solve for that. And that's something that's actually measurable. So now when we go to funders, we can say, okay, well, look, the program is designed to put them on a path where they can attain full-time jobs in tech. We define that both as, say, an engineering or technical role in another industry, like in hospitality or whatever, or a non-technical job at a technology company. And a technology company is one where the software is the product. Anyway, then we can just map for that. And we say, well, how do you know if someone's on track? Well, are they studying computer science? Well, we can actually go and survey the students, and say, well, do you plan to study computer science? And they say yes or no. And then, a few years later, we can say, okay, now what are you actually doing? Are you studying computer science? And we'll say, yes or no. Are you taking a class or not? So now it becomes much easier for us to
quantify.
To quantify. I mean, not easy for us. We can actually quantify and measure what we're doing, and it's very powerful for donors. And it's crucial to sustainability. So I'd say that. I'd say too, don't reinvent the wheel. You really should be sure that it makes sense for you to start this organization as opposed to, say, joining with an existing one, that you can work with. And of course, do as I say, don't do as I do, because I did start my own organization. I really thought long and hard about it and just decided that since there really wasn't anyone doing in New York doing something like this, that it made sense to do it.
Yes.
Hiring is really important. Board is really important. Also, just to say, All Star Code really has had a broader impact on the space. Since we launched in 2013, and our first event was covered by Fast Company, and it went viral. All of a sudden, people were asking us to expand to Chicago, and I was doing press interviews all over the place because I didn't even have one full-time employee.
Wow.
But since we've launched, there really has been this embryonic community forming of I wouldn't say community exactly, but other organizations that are daring to just put young men of color forward, and saying we can just teach this group, coding. There are girls groups, there's coding for coal miners, there's coding for, all different slices of girls, and women, there's mother coders now, lesbians who code. And, and it's all great. And I think taking the radical step of saying, we can do a Black boys code and a Latino boys code, because this demographic is among the most underrepresented in tech, and we need everyone on the playing field. So that's the real impact. It's, can we get every computer science department thinking also about the representation of these boys? And maybe boys are overrepresented in computer science overall, but not from these particular communities. And the fact that they're not there is a problem.
Yes.
For a community and for America. That's the biggest impact of what we're doing. Each time we go somewhere, it inevitably brings this race to the forefront, and it gets people thinking about who's not here in a way that's just radically different.
Yes. Christina, I could keep talking to you for a good bit more. Where we getting set to wrap up here?
Tell people that they can follow along by signing up for our newsletter. We have quite a good newsletter. My background was in journalism, and so we've just always been, interested in emailing things out. So sign up there at our website, allstarcode.org, ALLSTARCODE.org. Our application is still open for a few more weeks. And so anyone who knows a teenage boy who is a Black or Latino or from another group that's underrepresented in computer science, Filipino and American Indian and others should apply. And in a few weeks, we're also going to have our spring celebration. You should be able to get info through the newsletter. I think it's up on our website publicly already. That'll be in New York City. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening. I encourage everyone to go out and dare greatly.
One more question for you before I let you go, though. What's one action that our Blaze Nation should take this week that's going to help them to blaze their trail?
Well, I'd say that they could pick a failure and figure out how they can learn from it.
Love that.
That is one of the best learning tools. You learn from failure. That's the whole point.
Yes.
Of recognizing it because you learn from it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank
Christina,
you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you so very much. I appreciate having you on. Christina Lewis, thank you so much.
Great. Have a great evening.
I'm Steve Nehart, and you've been listening to the Trailblazers.fm podcast. If you're not yet doing so, consider following Trailblazers.fm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and feel free to connect with me over on LinkedIn. Whenever you're posting stories or social media posts about Trailblazers.fm, be sure to use the hashtag TBPod and hashtag Mission Fuel. We'll be able to see you, and I'll be able to show some love. And in case you're not aware, our show notes for all our episodes can be found on our website over at tbpod.com. Now, if today was your first time listening, I just want to say big ups, enough respect for checking us out. You've made this Jamaican guy really happy that you're here with us today. And I'd love your help with keeping this Black excellence flowing each and every week. So if you haven't yet subscribed, hop on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Search Trailblazers.fm and subscribe, rate, and review us there. Be sure to browse through some of our past episodes. There are more than 150 published episodes now, and a little something is out there for everyone to help keep the knowledge flowing. We grow when you, as part of our Blazer Nation community, shares and invites your friends and family to listen to an episode you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories are going to be moved to make significant changes that have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern. Blazer Nation, go out today and find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail.